Okay, so we can go to question 3, where we're talking about risk assessment. Though I think one of the days we will need to go through the very topic and understand certain things that are associated with this topic. Yeah, so among the things that I feel are important, even before we go to the question itself, we need to understand the, maybe let me just read through it. Risk assessment is an important diagnostic tool in toxicological studies. So to start with, just from the word go, we need to understand certain terminologies such as risk. Need to understand what risk means. We need to understand the word such as the hazard. In case we walk along the corridor of the manufacturing plant, then we find the word hazard, stay away. What does it mean? Then we have to look at the risk assessment. We also look at the risk management. What are the differences? Risk hazard, risk assessment, risk management. We need to understand what these words mean to us. So to start with, when we hear of the word risk, something that is risk, what do we mean? We of course associate the word to something that is got danger. Yeah, something that has got danger. So in the toxicology, according to the way they defined it, they said that the risk, something that is risky, we are not really sure, we are not really 100% that it is likely to cause death or something. Or maybe let me start with the word hazard, because in the risky, the hazard is mentioned. So let me use the word hazard. Something that is hazardous, what do we mean? So the word hazard talks about something that is the substance that is able to bring or is able to cause damage or adverse effect. So something, we're talking about a substance in toxicology, we're talking about a substance that is able to bring or is likely to cause the harm to a body of a human being, a body of an organism, or is likely to bring an adverse effect. So that is something that we can refer to as a hazard. Now, how do we really like link to the topic of the today toxicology? If we have a substance which is referred to as a hazard substance, we are saying it is that substance that is likely, it's not friendly, it's not environmental friendly, it's not human friendly. We're talking about that substance that is dangerous, is likely to cause or bring harm to the body. That is something we can call as a hazard. Now, when we read on the cover of the container, we find the word risk. We're talking about that substance that is able, that has got the ability, or something that is able to that is likely to cause, or that is likely to be hazardous. I don't know if you're going to understand what I mean. Something that is hazardous if a human being is exposed to. Something that, okay, let me also, instead of use the word hazardous, let me say something that is able, or something that is harmful to the human body or to an organism when exposed to. If they say tobacco, smoking tobacco is risky, what do we mean? We are saying when we come in contact with the tobacco, we are like, when we're exposed to that substance, we are likely to experience the harm. So it is important that we understand something that is a hazard substance, something that's likely to cause or bring harm to the organism. Then something risky is that one that has got the probability of it causing harm is very high when you are exposed to. Now, when we hear that a substance is hazardous, something is hazardous, let's say they suspect to say, in this tangawizi that I'm drinking now is a hazardous drink. Now, we as environmental monitors, how do we get to prove that? So all we need to do is now to do a risk assessment. Why are we doing a risk? Why are we doing risk assessment? We'll look at the purpose in general. After that, then we have to look at the importance of this risk assessment in the question here is talking about the purpose of risk assessment in addressing the environmental contamination problems. Let's say a river is contaminated. Now, we are told to go and do the risk assessment. What is the importance of the risk assessment in combating or in addressing that problem that has been reported in a specific area? We also have to look at the steps that we follow when you are executing duties in the risk now management. You are trying to manage that situation. There's certain things that we must do. Then thereafter, we have to look at the importance or the role of this risk assessment now when you are making the decision. So there are two things under risk assessment. We have to look at when addressing the matter, or when we are managing more or less like when you're addressing. So there's to manage the problem that has been given to us, as well as now how to make decision making or making decision. These things are very important, and you need to put clear-cut distinctions. Managing as well as making a decision. When you're making a decision, you're just coming up with something that you have to be skillful. There are times you want to get rid of a contamination in water. By so doing, you use a chemical that is now likely to shift the harm. That problem may be worked on, but thereafter you find that someone now develops other problems. Let's say piriton. Piriton is regarded as the drug that we use when someone has got flu. Now, again, taking too much of piriton, you end up shifting the problem from flu now to dizziness. So when you're making decisions, we have to make sure that we are very much skillful, so that when we come now to manage, among the things that we discuss under decision making, then here we need to choose now the best ones and implement them. Yeah, so what is risk assessment? So we're saying that the risk assessment, let me just write it here. It's important that we understand these things than just rushing into answering the questions. It's important that we set the base. Risk assessment, what is it? So we're saying that this is a process. It's just a process, not an action. There's a difference between a process and an action. I'll come and explain some of these things later. So this is a process by which we are determining how far a certain contaminant can, how much harm a certain contaminant can, how much harm it can cause on an object. We are trying to assess. Remember what we said about the risk. The probability that once this organism is exposed to this pollutant, we are likely to see adverse effects. So we are trying now to assess how much harm that pollutant can bring to an organism. So if you want to define it in a toxicological method or terminologies, you may say risk assessment is a process by which the hazard, something that is hazardous, or the exposure of the contaminant. So we are trying to find how much the hazard and how much of the exposure can be determined. Here, we are just assessing, we are just determining, we have not yet done the management. So there's risk assessment as well as the risk management. So under risk assessment, we're just trying to find a way in which this hazard may be determined, how much of it maybe is in the river, according to the step on which you are under risk assessment, because there are also steps that we follow. So we're going to look at that. So we want to find out how much exposure and the hazard can be determined. Now, the process of determining that's what you are calling it risk assessment. While risk management is now we are weighing. So now when you're managing, it's as good as that saying that people like using. They advise this person, you will stop going out with that girl, stop going out with that guy. Like the way you advised me, stop drinking beer. Of course, I don't, I was just trying to dramatize it. Don't drink beer. The effects of drinking beer are that and that. You are under risk assessment. Or if you want to drink beer, just take one or take three. Now, for me to start now implementing, for me now to weigh which of those alternatives you had given me is the best now for me, according to my health, according to my social being, as well as my financial stability. I'm giving as an example on an individual basis. Now, I have to weigh which one of those alternatives you had given me are the best options. That is the risk management. So you have to weigh the policies, you have to weigh those suggestions that we came up under risk assessment. When we are dealing now with a situation, we have to weigh which one to put in place. Now remember, this is on the environment. So there are quite a lot of things that we have to consider. One, we have to look at the social aspect. We have to look at the economic, how much money do we have? Because some drugs are really expensive to buy. Also, as well as the political concern, among others. Why is it important like this? Remember, it was the other day, we were talking about other forms of, or other alternative forms of energy. Now, so when they come to us and ask us which form of energy do you think we need to go for? That's why in our answers, we were giving advantages. At times, it's important, even look at the negative point of it, you give disadvantages so that when they come now for risk management, they'll say, nuclear energy, despite there being production of a lot of energy, but the disadvantages are a lot. I think we can't go for it. We are weighing. Why? Because those different disadvantages may affect the social being of people. We may not even have enough money to construct the dams for cooling the reactors, maybe even for the political aspect, it may not allow us. So now when we start weighing all that, that's what we call risk management. I hope that is okay. Now, there are two things again now here that we have to discuss. I don't know if you have questions on the risk assessment and the risk management, if maybe the differences are not. Okay.
No, I'm okay.
Good. Okay. So now we have to look at two things, because very soon you people will be holding decision-making positions, maybe on a national level. So they may come to you to say, I think we heard of nuclear energy. It produces quite a lot of energy, and the reactions, the way things happen, the nuclear, then in the reactor, the fusion, the fission, I think it's spontaneous. You don't need to be there to supervise how it's going. It's just a natural, non-stopping process. So I think we can go for it. Now, so you have to sit with them. Or perhaps they give you homework to research. So now on that part, that is when now you need to come up with two important stages. These stages are very, very much important when you are trying to come up with the solutions to deal with a situation. Number one, there's what we call decision making. There's decision making. After we look at decision making, then we can look at problem solving. The problem solving now, that is the addressing. So I'm just trying to look at the broader picture so that in case the other year they don't bring it as addressing like the way they did in this paper, they bring it as problem solving. We know that we're talking about one and the same problem solving. At times they say, now we have to address the matter, or maybe even manage what we have at hand. So these are very important. We need to understand the two, because under risk assessment, there's a question which is linked. The importance of risk assessment in decision making, the importance of risk assessment in addressing the environment. So first of all, before we connect the two, we looked at risk assessment, we looked at risk management. So we have to understand this, so that once we understand, it becomes very easy for us to answer the questions from the risk assessment to their importance. So which of the two comes first? Do you solve the problem minus discussing the possible solutions? Or do you first suggest the possible solutions and then we start implementing? Because in bigger companies, it may not be one person doing it. There may be people just sit in deciding the possible solutions. After they are done with those that are on the lower level, then they pass over to the people on higher positions. Then they start analyzing to say, I think this chemical that Mr. So-and-so suggested that we should buy, that is very expensive. Now we are on the addressing. We have to choose which one we need to go for. So the one that comes first is decision making. First, you have to make a decision. First, you have to make a decision. You have to decide. This is common. At times I like dramatizing it, connecting what we are learning to what is outside. I hope you allow me to. I'm not wasting time, but I just wanted to
Yes, you can.
Okay. It was the other day, 2 days ago, not 2 days ago, I think a day ago, I had a friend that came. So he was trying to talk about the marriage stuff and all that. Then he was like, no, with me, I think I haven't found the right partner. The one I had is jumpy. So now I got to have another one. Then I asked him, so do you mean you are dating two people? He said, no, but yes. Why are you saying that? I am making a decision. I want to come and make a decision from their behavior. I'm trying to see who goes according to my expectations, decision making. So that's what comes first. You set standards. I need to have that. I need to have that. I need to have that. I need to have so much and that and that. Then when it comes to problem solving, then you deal with them. Say, I think this one is useless. So I'll put you aside. Excuse me, I have picked on this one. So that helps us to understand that what comes first is decision making. You're choosing a decision, yeah, but it sounds a little bit ambiguous, but let's look at the point that when you are when under decision making, you are coming up with the possible solutions that you can go for. Yeah, the possible solutions that you can go for in combating the situation. Then now when you come up with them, you want to choose which one is the best. That's when you go for a problem solving. And remember, when you're doing the first one, it's as good as that one we're doing in analytical under the stages that are involved in sampling, where we said there is desktop stage where you come up with solutions, this, that. Now, when you come to implement that point, you need someone who is very, very skillful, someone who understands those points that we have at hand. So this comes first, then we have this. So now, what is the importance of risk assessment when you are making choices under decision making? And what is the importance of risk assessment when you are now implementing? So that's what I want us to look at. So the questions are here saying risk assessment is risk assessment is an important diagnostic tool in the toxicological study. So the question is, what is the significance of risk assessment in addressing an environmental? Now, we are facing the problem that we have. We are facing it. So according to my own judgment, I felt we need first to understand the decision making first, because it is at this point where I will come up with all the possible solutions that we are going to implement here when you're addressing now the matter. So what points do we need to consider here? So when we are deciding, we need to first of all understand the nature of the contaminant. Remember, first of all, we need to understand the nature of the contaminant. It goes back to the properties again. We need to understand the understanding of the nature. I mean also the properties. We need to come up with we need to understand the nature of the contaminant as well as its properties, so that we can suggest the methods to use to apply when we are addressing that matter. So one of the, I'm going to send this, I think I can type, one of the role that risk assessment plays is that it helps us to understand, one, you understand the nature of the contaminant. Once you understand the nature of the contaminant, it becomes easy to even identify or suggest the possible solutions to that situation at hand.
Can you just repeat that?
Okay, what I'm saying is that it helps us to study the nature of the contaminant or the nature of the toxicant. Once I speak loud, I'm feeling the choking on my throat.
Just take it easy.
I know, but we haven't had a class this week, so we have to move a little bit, no? So what I'm saying is, when we are under decision making, we first of all have to understand the nature or the characteristic of the pollutant or toxicant. Once we understand that this is a hydrophobic pollutant, its solubility in water is low, we are going to come up with suggested possible solutions that we can use to apply when you are dressing. So there are two things there. Remember, there are 5 marks. So if you want, you can split them. 1, it helps us to understand the nature of the properties of the pollutant. 2, you can also say that it helps us to identify the possible solutions. They are just possible. We're not saying you're going to apply them all, we just list them. Okay? Then 2, once we come up with those possible solutions, say, okay, we need the ethane, we need the cyclohexane.
Sorry, Bakunda, I wasn't getting you. You are faint.
Okay.
I only get the first. That was helps us to understand the nature of the contaminant.
2,
so that we come up with suggested solutions.
Yes, possible solutions.
Then the last part.
The other one is that I was just trying to connect. Now, once you come up with the suggested possible solutions, then it helps us to allocate even the resources. We can suggest how much we need according to those suggestions. We will give them a budget. If you want to go, if you want us to go for let's say by a fractional crystallization, we need about 200,000 kwacha. We are suggesting even the economic resources. We are suggesting even the resources, so that those people will be implementing, they will look at how much is there. I remember I even talked about the social aspect. Then we say, okay, if we go by fractional distillation, we just need 700,000 kwacha. We are suggesting for them. So that is another. So suggest, yeah, we also, it provides the information about the allocation of resources. Also, we can put in one word, the resources, even the safety of those chemicals they need to buy, we need to give them. That's what they were telling us to say. If you are trying to suggest for a chemical, you need to give precautions how to handle that chemical. The other one also, we need to tell if this substance is hazardous or not, so that they know how to go about it. Why are we doing this? The last point is that we are trying to provide the safety of the environment. That's what we are doing. Okay, so why are we doing this? We're trying to provide the safety for the environment. That is the reason why I need to state if it's hazard, the safety and all that, so that we protect, because we don't need just to remove that toxicant from the water and then we leave the water contaminated with any other chemicals. You see what happens to chlorine? You can have the bacteria in the water. Chlorine. When you put a lot of chlorine in there, you find that those bacteria will be killed. But is that water now safe for drinking? The water becomes bitter. So that's why we need to do that. So those are the things we can go for, why risk assessment is important in decision making. We're just trying to come up with possible solutions so that now when it comes to addressing, we are going to capitalize on these ones. Then on the other part now, why we need suggest the significance of risk assessment now in addressing. We are now trying to address the problem at hand. Addressing problem. What? Oh no, I need to do this. What is the importance? Now, this one, the whole thing is to make sure that we solve the problem. Because we have been suggested with the possible solutions. Now, once we implement them, what we are doing is to combat the problem. That is one. Two, these ones, they're at this stage, we are trying to regulate. Because those ones that gave us possible suggestions did not really tell us which method to go for. So now it's us to regulate those solutions so that even when we implement, we don't want to shift them from this part, like they were given that part of chlorine. So these are the ones who are used now as regulators. And whatever method they go for, it has to be documented. In case we get now the auditors, the observers, the monitors, now they come to say, Imwe, but you use chlorine to kill those bacteria that were in the water. How come people are complaining that the water is bitter? So now that information you had kept will be used now to provide an oversight, as in to provide now a regulation of how much. I don't know if that is the best way I should bring it. The information that we're going to keep when addressing the matter will be used for future reference. In case someone complains, no, I think the water is very bitter, we're able to go back to look at how much of the information, how much of the antibiotic, how much of the antitoxicant that we had used in order to combat the situation. So these ones are used as regulators. Then the other one is that the other one that we can go for is that other than combating, if you want to split it, you can go for it is used to protect. You now protect environmental threat. Environmental threats. Of course, there are quite a lot that we need to provide when you're addressing the matter. Why do we need to do some form of assessment? Now, here, if you're not careful, there is a very narrow line between risk assessment.
What about, sorry, Bakunda, can I ask a question? If we
Yes.
talked about in this, when we talked about the role that risk assessment plays.
Sorry?
I wanted to ask, when we talk about the third question, we're talking about the role that risk assessment plays on the environment, isn't it?
On the risk assessment
C.
plays in environmental decision making.
Oh yes. So if we, the third question, we're talking about what the role that risk assessment plays in environmental decision making. We talked
Yes.
about resource allocation.
Yes.
I was thinking even on the importance of risk assessment, can we also include resource allocation?
Yes, because remember I said,
Pardon?
yes, we can.
So how do we put it?
Remember, in decision making, you are just suggesting, like the way I said, if you say we have two possible ways we can go for, it's you to give them a budget to say, oh, okay, for crystallization, we need, let's say, 2 million. Then for high performance liquid chromatography, because it's expensive, we need, let's say, 3 million quarter. I don't know if that's how you write. Now, it's now at this decision, it's now at the addressing point. That's when they have to look at the economic aspect. How much do we have? So now, remember on the part of regulation, they're not only regulating the chemicals, they're also regulating the amount.
Yes.
You've seen that. So we can also bring in now, these ones are there now to ascertain the cost. I think we can put it in that way. To ascertain the cost of the suggested methods so that it doesn't run the country bankrupt. So we can put it in a way that it helps in funds allocation according to the variability of the resources. Mwamvera? Yeah, so we can say it's important in funds allocation according to the variability of the resources. Because those guys just suggested, they didn't tell us which one to go for. It's us now in addressing the matter. We look at how much do you have, or in China 50 pin. I think I want to have a 20 pin. How much do you have? 70? I think we can't go for this one. It's more expensive. Go for that. So it's at this point where we allocate now. We need to allocate their funds according to the availability of the resources. I think these points are enough to just 5 marks. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we can look for another one, which I might type later, but I think these are the ones that came to my mind. So, yeah, then I don't know if that is okay with what we have said. And it seems we don't have enough time. We might be disturbed anytime soon. How much time do we have? I think less than a minute. Yeah.
We can cut it and do the other session so to finish quickly.
Okay.
Just create another one before it cuts.